Perfect. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Hi, Sir Sylvans. Hi, everybody that's on Instagram already and on Facebook. If it looks like I'm crooked, it's probably because my 10-month-old baby likes to play with things. And he's, walking now. So he's taking those steps. And so he's decided that he wants to take over the world, starting with Anaya's little setup studio until God gives me the next big thing. We're just going to pray he doesn't destroy everything here. What can we do?
Their presence is a blessing, right?
Yes, they are. And I'm glad we're talking about them right out of jump because yesterday was Mother's Day. And people are texting me. Okay, everybody who's texting and calling, please hold off because I can't read the messages, read the comments, answer calls, answer text messages. Oh my God, people keep hitting me up at the same time. I know I can walk and chew gum at the same time. However, I cannot answer these messages right now because we have a live show with my sister, STACEY, who's a part of the fight for justice for our children and our community of those beautiful children, Black, white, Spanish, Chinese. Actually, let's be real. The Chinese community, the Jewish community, and other communities do not get these things happening in their communities. It's predominantly Black, Hispanic, and white. I guess like the native people of America or something. I don't know. But anyway, I don't want to be racist. I don't want to have any issues tonight with my verbiage so Facebook and Instagram doesn't kick me off because they love to kick off Anaya A when I say things that are true. With that being said, people are requesting to see my baby. No, you cannot see my baby, especially not tonight. He's a handful and he has to be cleaned down because he just had dinner. But we're here. Happy Mother's Day to you, STACEY.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm a mother. Happy Mother's
Day to you too, my doll.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And we're going to try to do this segment tonight without crying too much because we know of what you're going through. But one thing I admire about you and all the other women that are part of the fight that we have going on right now is the fact that you all keep pushing and you're fighting for others. So we were supposed to have a brother by the name of, let me just check to make sure we're live, and then I'll do my whole little thing after that. We were supposed to have a brother on tonight. It seems to not be live on Facebook. Oh, we are live. Okay, good. It seems we already had like 7 to 10 views already, but then we had to come back, STACEY, as you know. But let me just double check everything here before we get into the nitty gritty of everything. Okay, I can hear us. And you're fighting for others. Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. So I can hear us. We're good to go. Whew. So STACEY is here with us. We were supposed to have on Brother Barry. That was who was advertised today. And truly, I want to say I apologize to everybody who might have been waiting for the flyer a lot earlier. However, I got news, and it's seriously something that threw me off when I found out, Mama Donna passed away, because it's just like when it hit social media the way it did today, I just really was sad. And so I always keep my word though. So when I told Barry I would interview him tonight, that's exactly what I intended on doing. So I don't know if maybe he thought that this wasn't going to happen, but we spoke and I told him that this was going to happen. And as you know, STACEY, from knowing me for the past, couple of months, I always keep my word. But without further ado, right? STACEY is here.
Yes, you do. You're big on keeping your promises.
That's it, because guess what? If I don't keep my promise to you all, then the fight is not really worth anything, because this is why I started this thing, is to help others, but also help myself to understand what is happening around us. And so with that being said, I'm going to let you take over. If Barry shows up, great. If not, I don't know what to tell him. But STACEY, you know the story very well. You brought this man to us, and tonight it's your platform, because I don't know all the words. You know what I mean?
Okay, sure. So my name is STACEY STONNELINNER, and I also do interviews of people throughout New York State. in exposing the blunders of the child protective system throughout our state. And my claim to fame that I always state at the beginning of my shows is that I am the ex-spouse of an attorney who formerly worked for Child Protective Services. And we had a very long, contentious divorce. It spanned 10 years. And basically, any hurdle or any obstacle that can be thrown your way, I've encountered through this process. And so I bring that experience to everybody and my learnings and teachings through this situation. My children did disclose abuse at the hands of their father. They disclosed sexual abuse. They disclosed strangulation, witnessing the strangulation of a sibling. And then there were also issues with inadequate guardianship, lack of medical care, and educational neglect. The father is indicated by CPS 4 times, but he still has custody. I'm a medical professional, no history of mental health issues. I own my own home. I don't smoke. I rarely drink, but he has custody. And through this process, I learned that transparency is one of the cures to court corruption. And whether you believe in the Bible or not, some people may not believe in the Bible, but we can all agree it's a historical document at least.
Yes.
And if you look at Luke,
agree on.
right. So if you look into Luke 11, that's where Jesus called out lawyers and judges and said, "Woe ye lawyers and experts of law." And Jesus promised that that which has been whispered into ears of inner rooms will be shouted from rooftops, and that what has been said behind closed doors will in the darkness will be brought to light. So Jesus went out to, sorry, my cat. Jesus went out to the thousands of onlookers, and that was the cure to the corruption. And so that today, I think is equivalent to court watching. The cure to our corruption in the courts is the public going in and watching what's happening. It makes judges and so forth a little more hesitant to be corrupt. And I just say hesitant, it doesn't stop it, because if you just sit there and watch too, they might just start doing their dirty in front of you, or be bold. Or if you're watching virtually, there was some IT problem, but really they were just, trying to keep matters from the public. So they'll make excuses. So, but court watching has been a very successful operation. So in the beginnings, years ago, family court judges especially would say, "Oh, confidentiality, you can't come in and watch this case, confidentiality." Well, that's not what our Constitution says. Our Constitution says, First Amendment, that the public has a right of access to our courts. There's also public officers law, I think it's Article 6, that the public has the right to know how our taxpayer dollars are performing. And indeed, we are our judges' employers. They are our employees, no matter how big.
Just like politicians as well.
Right.
And no matter how big.
Right. No matter how big or inflated their ego is, we're still their employer, and they are our employees. So, so we have all these rights to go in and watch and see how our courts are performing and what's being adjudicated. And just so everybody knows, in New York State, the rule is Uniform Rules of Family Court, Section 205.4. If you look that up, it gives you the right of public access to the courts, and it does stipulate some exceptions. For example, if you're going to be a witness, it actually stipulates if there's enough chairs in the courtroom or some things like that. But by all means, you want to fill all those chairs, because that's what we need to start doing. People start criticizing our media. They think it's not reliable, the mainstream. And so if you want to know what's really going on in your community, go right to the source and go watch in court yourself.
In there. So let's stop you there, Stacey, because we already have a couple of comments. Yes, thank you so much, Sir Sylvans. He loves the show. He loves what he's hearing tonight. I'm so appreciative of his presence as always. Thank you, Brother Dre, for actually sharing our live tonight. And he has a great big following in his community of Virginia, the DMV. So he's watching tonight. Stacey, run us through the process before we go any further as to how does one enter into the court and basically say, I want to watch this court hearing because it's imperative and I want to support, or I just want to know what's going on. How does one go about that? Because I feel like my platform helps edutain people, you know, positively educating through entertainment. So that's my whole goal. Tell us how
Right.
does one go in and say, I want to become a court watcher or I want to watch this court hearing?
It should be as simple as just showing up. But unfortunately, um, sometimes it's just not that simple, and you have to be assertive of your rights. The way we gained access to the courts throughout New York State, it wasn't just that I did this locally, I did this in court watched cases throughout New York State, is if we were refused access, we emailed the chief administrative judge of New York State and the law clerk, and I believe her name is Janet Fink. You can look up her email address, it's public information. If you're denied access, hop on your email, let them know the case and the access you're being denied. You can carbon copy the law clerk to the judge that you're demanding your right of access to the case. And sometimes we even had to be more assertive to that and basically state that if you don't let us in, we will be filing a non-party witness affidavit to the case to the effect we were denied our constitutional right of access to watch this case.
Wow, wow, wow. Yes.
That gets reaction and that gets us in.
I bet it does. Because you know the verbiage, you know what to say, you know what to do. And that's why it's important that people watch this show, support, stop and share everybody right now. Go ahead, Stacey.
So again, as more people do this and more people assert their right and utilize their right, then the less resistance you're going to get. I know that in the Erie County courts in Buffalo, New York, where I basically did start this, even the court officers know of the public's right to come in and monitor now. And sometimes I've seen them even explaining to the judges what this is. So the more you exercise that right and assert yourself, the more uniform it's going in pedestrian, it's going to become and accepted. And that's the ultimate goal, is that it's so common that it is uniformly recognized and common for people to walk in and out and monitor court cases. All things aside, when you weigh the risks and the benefits, confidentiality, privacy to your case, at the end of the day, if you want fair adjudication to your case, especially if you're marginalized in any sort of way, you need transparency and you need court watchers in the room.
And I want to say Cheryl Huff, the president of the National Action Network Tennessee chapter, is watching, and she says yes. The reason is because she actually stood on behalf of the family. You remember about 3 weeks ago or so, I interviewed her as well as her team, Christina Laster and Reggie Clay, who actually spent time doing the court watching thing in Tennessee. So this information is out there and people are utilizing it. And there was a ton of people that ended up going to stand in the gap for the family who lost all 5 of their children. And they got the children back. So
sometimes, sometimes I hear the excuse or the misperception that court watching doesn't exist in a certain state and they wished it did, but that's a fallacy. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land throughout the United States, and that's every single state has to allow the right of public access to the courts. When somebody thinks that court watching doesn't exist in their state, that's because nobody spearheaded it and reminded these judges who their employer is and our rights.
I love it. Who is your employer, Big Daddy? Right, us. We are your employers. People have to get that together. Okay, so Stacey, moving forward, let the people know how you were able to get in, especially for Mr. Berry, because you have your own case going on, which we've already interviewed you about, and we're going to touch on that a little bit later. But let's get into Mr. Berry Gibbs, a Black man, a father, a caring citizen, a musician, whom I don't think had even a record prior to any of this happening. Can you please expound on how you met Mr. Barry Gibbs?
Yeah. So Mr. Gibbs was referred to me by somebody else who's has a very active role in the courts and monitoring the situation. He was affected as well, and that sparked his, interest in monitoring to the courts. So Barry called me, and he was all upset and frantic one day because his son was in an institution, in a group home, and he felt that his son wasn't even supposed to be there. He felt that he was put in there into the group home due to false allegations of neglect. And Barry started to describe the group home to me.
Mm.
And once you take an active role in the courts, and you know you become aware of situations, and suddenly, once you're aware of situations, sometimes the situations become intertwined, and one case is related to another. And I said to Barry, I said, Mr. Gibbs, you can stop. I said, you don't have to convince me. I've already heard things about this group home, and you don't have to convince me that your son may be being mistreated there. I've already heard.
Wow.
And yeah, so I put him in contact with another parent whose child is placed there. But this child that was placed there, I also was aware of. And this child has a history of sexualized behaviors.
Wow.
And I'm a medical professional myself, and in the capacity of my profession, I sent letters to authorities stating that it's inappropriate to place this child with sexualized behaviors into a group home setting, where if he offends on other children, he's at risk for that. But even if he offends on other children, he's also at risk of harming himself, because hurting other kids hurts him too.
Mm-hmm.
And this
Psychologically, he just seems like he is very abused, and he wants to just abuse anybody around him. Is that
Right.
the case with this young person?
So yeah, so I told Mr. Gibbs, I said, I'm not sure if the child was, sexually abused before he went to the group home or while at the group home, but it may even be both, in all honesty. Um, and so Mr. Gibbs was intelligent enough to say, okay, if there's possibly some abuse at this group home, I'm going to ask my own son if he's been abused. And thank God Mr. Gibbs did, because all of a sudden his son gave him a full out disclosure.
Wow, of being abused in this group home. Let's take
Right.
a moment to just let the people know we are live tonight. Everybody's expecting to see Mr. Barry Gibbs. I get it, trust me. But you have the next best thing. His right-hand woman, I want to call her. Her name is Miss STACEY STONNELINNER. She is from Buffalo. She let us know about this case and this situation. I want everybody to stop and share this with your friends. We have approximately 5 people watching on Facebook and Instagram. Let's get those numbers higher. Ryan Max says, good talk. Gregory Roberts says, lovely sight to see you tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And of course, Cheryl Huff, who's watching from Tennessee, is in agreement about the court watch. So here's the bottom line. And for those that are watching on Instagram, please let your friends know this is the Anaya A Show. We try to cover stories that are definitely impacting our community. And real quick, STACEY will be with us live in Harlem, the village of Harlem, on May 31st, as we will be having a live interactive resource reunification process, hopefully with families in the community, trying to get as much information out there as possible. Even when all the leaders and the politicians have failed us, we still have to depend on ourselves. We still have to do the work, because guess what? Like STACEY just shared about Jesus, Jesus walked alone. The 12 disciples came up upon him and they worked beside him. But as we can see, the 12 disciples even set him up for failure and they let him down. So all we have is ourselves right now. And STACEY is sharing about Barry Gibbs, who is a father whose child got taken away by CPS and foster care and put into a group home. Now, this is why I have to share this, and I don't want to get emotional and irate tonight. Funny enough, I went to a local politician and I shared, all these things that, and it's not funny. I don't mean funny in that sense. I mean, and I have to share.
Irony.
Right, the irony of it all. And Stacey, you have to know this, right? And I went to this politician after going from politician to politician, trying to get help for the community. And granted, the stories that we're hearing are outside of New York City. He's a Bronx politician. And, he was like, Anaya, I know exactly what you mean. I've seen it. I've heard the stories. Matter of fact, one of his children were murdered. He, not his personal child, but like a child that he knew of in foster care and things of that nature. And I just have to share, like, we just need more accountability and transparency in our communities, because these stories of abuse are happening so much. And again, this person, said that we were going to be working together, etc. Now, interestingly enough, those that are in New York, they're like afraid to talk. It seems like the ones that are nearby are not doing their part and standing up for justice. And we have to put an end to that too. You should not be in fear for telling the truth, for shaming the devil, for coming out and speaking against abuses. Like Stacey is talking about Barry right now, whom she knows, whom she advocated for. This man's son got abused in a situation he shouldn't have never been in to begin with. Now he may end up with psychological issues, emotional issues, you name it, because of the abuse. And we're going to get to Stacey's story as well. But you guys have to understand, we need more leaders. We need more community advocates that are actually doing wellness checks within the system. This young boy was in a group home. Why is he getting abused sexually by another little boy in a group home setting? You guys, wake up.
Well, and these are difficult times, and there's a lot of divide in our country.
Talk about it. Let's be real. Let's take off the good girl, masks and stuff, because interestingly enough, I keep having conversations with people about politics, and I'm tired of the politics of it all. Let's talk about genuine care.
Correct. And that's, I work with people from extreme right to extreme left and everywhere in between. And do you know why?
Talk about
I
it.
do that because if you're a good person, it doesn't matter what ethnicity you are. It doesn't matter what political affiliation you are. It doesn't matter what religion you subscribe to. It doesn't matter. If you're a good person, we all agree child abuse is wrong. And if you stay within your own race, or if you stay within your own political organization, you're going to be speaking essentially in a vacuum. You're not going to have outreach. And this is one topic that unites us all.
Talk about
it. It unites all good people. So I reach out to everybody and anyone in between. Because again, if we all care about children, we're all good people. It doesn't matter your background. So if we operate divided, we're not going to conquer this.
We can't.
We need to unite. And if you subscribe to racism, you have to subscribe to every other ism. And we've talked about this, and I think it was the Bob Marley song that references isms and schisms, right?
Yep.
Right. So there are many other evil isms in the world. Sexism, right?
Narcissism,
cronyism, nepotism, right? So there's a lot of evil isms in the world, and those are the ones that leave people technically marginalized. So, my case involves cronyism and nepotism, right? And it left my children in danger. So, and again, the cure to those evil isms is transparency. So one of the cures, I would say anyway. So we all have to get past that, and not for anything, but I think it's been long enough where many people are getting sick of all the divide and want to start talking with each other. And I hope for that because we do need to unite.
Absolutely. And you hit a very great point too. And for those that know me, I'm super passionate. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all of the problem solved. There's no way. I mean, Jesus couldn't even do it. And he was God's child, for crying out loud. But here's the bottom line. Where is the genuine concern? That's what scares me, Stacey. My genuine concern is the fact that people are turning blind eyes because it doesn't affect them, but it does. It
Right.
absolutely positively does. The world that we live in today, I don't recognize it. I really don't. And I'm in fear for my own son, which I made a public declaration. I'll be leaving this country. And not that it's anywhere better than another place, but I feel like in other communities, now I'm going to go down a rabbit hole, but I'm going to come right back.
It's really okay. It's okay.
Okay, thank you. The gun population thing with combined with the mental illness of people possibly getting raped, molested, hurt early on in life leads to so much danger in this country. And what I fear the most is the fact that because people are so almost immune to what's happening, we are at greater risk and greater danger. But people don't get, and a lot of people, granted, have not studied human behavior or psychology or understand what it feels like to counsel people. I get that. Not everybody can say they understand why people act the way they do. But let's just take off, that mask of, not being a psychologist for a moment and just saying that maybe if I try to help my brother and sister that I know is going through a problem, maybe we could start healing the world a little bit more together. Because the bottom line is this: what we're talking about is not new under the sun, right, Stacey? And the Bible talks about that. There is nothing new under the sun. But the caveat is this: what do we do about it? What do we do about it?
So I take comfort in those who describe our current state as these problems have always been there, but now we're just exposing it more.
Yes.
Because if you go back to um, even the Roman days and the public baths, in the public baths, prostitutes went there, fathers and parents went there, and children went there. So, what place do children have in a public area where there's prostitutes and adults? And in the Roman era, those days, those public Roman baths, fathers molested their sons to teach them the way.
Wow. Right. I've heard of certain things. I've heard of certain communities doing really crazy things. For us, it's crazy, but then for other cultures, it's cultural. Oh,
So basically these problems have always existed. So I tend to think that the horrible things we're hearing today just have always existed, but they're becoming more talked about, which is actually healthy.
and not
It's
only
just
that, may I just add this real quick? Don't forget what you're saying.
Mhm.
Back in those days, they didn't run around with AKs shooting up schools and things because they also didn't have fentanyl, I don't think, and
there
crack.
was some there was some weird creepy things going on though, because there's definitely some stories that have lived through the years.
Right.
Um
Which we know of, but what I'm saying is even those stories cannot, I don't think, match today's madness. Like we know some creepy stuff happened then because nothing is new under the sun again. But let's be real. We don't even know when well, you live in Buffalo. I don't know what it looks like there. It's probably more greener.
well, we've had a hard share of problems here. Absolutely. When you're talking about shooting, Buffalo had the tops shooting what was it, a couple of years ago now, maybe 1 to 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, with the top smash shooter. So we have our share of problems here too. Honestly, I, you know, obviously we're connecting some dots here because personally, um, I believe that these mass shootings are related to child abuse.
Yes.
When you look at the research coming out of criminal institutes, they say the one thing that's in common among mass shooters is that they have a history of child sex abuse or significant childhood trauma.
I know.
So when you couple that with a system that is ignoring child sex abuse, like we're talking about Barry's case and a child that was in an institution, and it's appearing that they knew this child sex abuse was going on and they were ignoring it. When you have that happening and people ignoring child abuse, child sex abuse, I think that starts that procures shooters. Now,
Absolutely.
clearly, I don't feel anyone that's been sex abused is at risk of being a mass shooter.
Right.
But I do believe that children have immature coping skills. So you cannot expect a child to respond like an adult with knowledge and wisdom and coping skills. So children are going to respond with a varied response. Some may get straight A's in school. Some may be abnormally compliant.
Right.
Some may be runaways. Some may have signs of anxiety. They're going to have a varied response. And one of those responses sometimes is anger, sexualized behaviors, behavioral disturbances. And if it's
And
not dealt with, those
yes.
kids can go on to become problems.
And the reason too is because the anger is so far repressed until something reignites that anger. And what people fail to understand, and I'm so glad that you're realizing the connected dots, right? Because I try to explain these things to people for people to understand. And a lot of times it goes over people's heads because I feel like we're in a society where people don't want to know the truth. They don't want to hear the truth. And sometimes they're afraid also of the truth. But we cannot be afraid of the truth anymore when it's in our faces. Imagine not having a voice. Thank you, Dre. Imagine not having a voice and then constantly being told you can't speak up. But then you have a fear of speaking up. Now, this torment that you're going through and that you're battling, right? It's inside of you. It's going to
Right.
combust unless somebody speaks it out. And let me share this with you all so that you guys can understand why I'm super passionate about psychology, therapy, speaking out, making sure that we have conversations. That's the degree, excuse me, that's the degree I studied. Like I studied psychology and public relations. Well, here's what ended up happening with me as I was living in London, England, studying abroad. My professor came in, STACEY, one day and was crying. I had never seen this man cry. He was super positive, super optimistic, super amazing. Dr. Billy Luter, if memory serves me correctly, it is Billy Luter, come in crying. And of course, me being who I am, I'm like, oh no, what happened? Because that's not like you. I've known that man for several years prior to that moment. Never seen him upset. He was my favorite professor in campus and overseas, obviously, as well. Long story short, he shared that day, if you all, as my students, are planning when you graduate to go on and become a psychologist, I would change my mind if I were you because the world of psychology is dying. It is a dying breed, and nobody is paying for psychology like that anymore. Insurance companies, rather, right? And of course, me being the pro psych like professional person in my mind that I was at like 19. I was only 16 when I graduated high school and went to university. So in my mind at 19, studying abroad, I'm like, what is this old man talking about? Of course they're going to need me. I have all these theories and I'm going to change people's lives and I will sit with my clients and I'll make sure they change because that's what I'm here for. And of course, I was so optimistic about my future. And he laid the biggest bomb on me and the rest of our class and said, the reason the world of psychology is fading away the way it is because the world of psychiatry has taken over. Now, I want you all to understand something. I'm older than what I look, right? So this is 2001 or 2002-ish. I'm in London, England. I'm like, psychiatry. Like, no, it can't happen that way because we have to talk it out. All I knew was that in order to get help, we need to release it from wherever the pain was. And we have to analyze and make sure that we get everything under control that the person was dealing with. Psychiatry just masks the problem.
Well, plus you're speaking of big pharma,
And
right?
big pharma, multi-gajillion dollar entity. So we couldn't fight big pharma. But my problem was, couldn't we try? And this man sat there and sobbed like with no control. He was inconsolable. And that's when I realized the type of world we were in. See, big pharma wants us to take the meds because the meds leads to other issues. And I'm not going to go too far deeply into this because I forgot I might get kicked off. But let's just say I know a whole lot more, guys. And if you want a one-on-one with me, we can talk more. But I can't say all of this on social media. I forget sometimes. But you understand where I'm going with this, Stacey, correct? And we can't go too deep into the rabbit hole. And the reason I said I'm going down, but I'm coming back up is because I want people to understand something. We can't mask the problem. We can't put a band-aid, over sexual abuse, over mental abuse, over physical abuse, over emotional abuse. It needs to be talked out. Why are you dealing with the issues you're dealing with? And how do we get you to get the help that you need? Taking these pills is not going to help. It will lead to other issues.
So
Go ahead.
another thing that I'm aware of is a report that was published by our own government, the U.S. Department of State, in June of 2019, and it was a report on human trafficking throughout the world, and it described how human trafficking occurs in China, India, yada yada. One guess what it said about the United States.
I can't even guess. You can tell me because I'm so baffled by what's happening. I can't even guess anymore.
Our own country admitted that most children who are sex trafficked in the United States come from foster care.
85%.
Right. So when you have our systems in place that are meant to protect children doing the opposite, then what surprises it that we have mass shooters?
You better preach tonight. And you know what? That's the interesting part about it because the statistics are there in our faces again. But who's reading? You know what I mean? Who's actually taking account? Who's actually listening? Who's actually making some changes? There's supposed to be bills in place. There's supposed to be resources in place. There's supposed to be amendments to bills. There's supposed to be, like planned actions. Yet we don't know what's happening ever because it's not on the priority list. So you're absolutely correct because you know who shared that information with me? Lolita Allen, our friend.
She's so wise, and everything she says, you need to listen because she's on spot.
On spot.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead, Stacey, give us more information and just help us understand some of the ways we can definitely, I don't even have words. You just go ahead because I'm just like, everything is right
Sure.
in our faces. Everything.
Right. So in our country, we're very conditioned to believe we have a justice system, that our country will take care of us. If you get in an accident, you call the ambulance or you call the police and they're going to come take care of you. And we're conditioned to believe that our government takes care of us. But we already just talked about how in our foster system, 88% of sex trafficked kids come from the foster care system. Right here locally, just outside of Buffalo, New York, we just had a former CPS attorney sent to jail for 8 felony counts of rape of women and one child that was allegedly in DSS custody.
While in custody.
So that's sex trafficking a child while through his official capacity as a CPS attorney, right? Under color of law. So right there you have sex trafficking through the foster care system, and people are still think that our government takes care of us. So we're conditioned to believe this, but it's really not what's happening, because at the end of the day, again, when we go back to the isms and schisms and we talk about uniting, all good people believe that child abuse is wrong. It doesn't matter if you're Black, if you're white, if you're green or you're purple. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Jewish, Catholic, Baptist, whatever you want to say you are. It doesn't matter, because if you want to know what's happening in the world, you follow the money.
Mm. And that's why a lot of things go swept under the rug. It's a money-making profit.
Do you really think our government's going to say, oh, look at this mass shooter, it's our fault because we sex trafficked children through the foster care system?
Yep.
No, they're going to blame everybody else, but look at themselves.
So, Stacey, what do you think? Thank you, sir, Sylvans. He said, as I was speaking moments ago, by the way, it was confirmed that my internet started getting really slow. That means it was about to shut down. That's why I shut my big mouth, because I know the keywords. So you guys can't trick me all the time. Sometimes I get tricked. And of course, I don't have millions of people watching and listening, because nobody wants to hear this. They want to hear who is robbing who is getting shot at the club,
Who's sleeping with who?
sleeping with who. Which, may I share before we get back into the big G, the big government, a lot of the behaviors that we even see on social media, on TV, on these reality TV shows and things of that nature, a lot of them are stemmed from abuse.
Right.
And
Right.
people are profiting off of their pain. And what
Right.
people don't understand is that the people that you see acting out in certain behaviors and, are showcased for those behaviors, they need the most help. But
Right.
you know what? Nobody's going to help them because it's more profitable.
Right. We just talked about mass shooters, but also, again, I go back to the opiate epidemic. I think that's related to child abuse too, because if you look at the research there that's put out by RAINN and so forth, children who have been sexually abused have 27 times higher likelihood of developing a polysubstance abuse disorder.
Absolutely. To
So
suppress
if,
that
if
anger and that
So if
pain.
you're ignoring these kids that are abused, and I kind of feel too, why do they tend to pick on schools for mass shootings? Well, if you're a child and you're growing up and you're a victim to sexual abuse or trauma, and your home isn't safe, the next place that you're at equally amount of time as your own home is your school. So if you don't have a safe home, you're praying and hoping a teacher helps you, a principal helps you, but when they turn a blind eye to your abuse,
Now where do you
you
go?
can't expect a child to not be angry.
Absolutely.
So right in my own hometown, we had 2 kids that were making social media threats to shoot up our school at the same time. One outright admitted that he or she was a victim of sexual assault and the system failed him or her. The other one admitted that they finally got the courage to show their arms that they were self-harming, that they were cutting,
Absolutely.
which is another huge red flag for a victim of child sex abuse. These kids, unfortunately, chose negative, extreme so extreme measures
behaviors, measures.
is a desperate cry for help. And I'm sure they tried other ways. Like they said, oh, I just got the courage to show my arms, but everyone ignored me. So
And
they resort to extreme measures. It's not something I condone. It's not something I excuse away. But if we want to start talking about how to fix this problem, got to stop ignoring the kids and getting them help. Sincere
real
help.
help.
Not, not one of these, systems, agencies that are funded by the federal government and incentivized to sex traffic children and snatch them from their families, but sincere help.
Sincere help. And that's where we want to share with the community some resources, some information. STACEY, let the community know. Let's talk about you, STACEY, and how are you doing? Let's talk about that because you're here tonight giving us some information, but we know that you are going through certain things. And before the end of this, live broadcast tonight, I want to share some resources and information for our community. But let's talk to you about how you're doing because one of the things that I know about you, STACEY, is you stay busy. You stay
Mhm.
busy to overcome, but also to, I guess, let the world know you're not going to be held down. Let's
Right.
talk about how you're doing in spite of all the things that you've been going through and what you even learned today, which I'm not going to share unless you want to share.
Okay. I respect that. And thank you. Um, again, my one of my greatest goals as a result of my experience is for my children's victimization to not be in vain. It's one thing if you have to suffer, it's another thing if your suffering resulted in some greater good. And I really feel strongly that this court watching, this greater participation and involvement of the public in our courts is successful and a means to helping our children, strengthen their future in our communities and make our communities safer. And so I really, my ultimate goal of my own experience, of course, number one is to get my kids safe. But aside from that, that our suffering leads to greater good for the people.
I love
So,
that. I love that.
so um, and court watching really works. Barry is just one example of many. And I'm no significant person. We don't have some huge court watching organization, but when we do it, most of the time it works. And many times we hear people going to the police, going to CPS, going to the school, and nobody's responding, nobody's helping. But the public gets in there in the courtroom and they watch, you're going to get more results.
Absolutely.
It's the same thing as the cat's away, the mice will play. If the
Yeah.
people disappear from the courts and we're not watching what's happening in the courts are going to start becoming by the government for the government.
Well, and they already are, but when we actually join a little bit and try our best to show up, I wish we would show up more. Then what happens is that transparency thing clicks on and they realize, oh my God, they're watching me. I can't just do what I want to do anymore. Like I
Right.
have to give a full account now. Whereas
At least,
before, they
right.
didn't
At least it makes it less or harder for them. So, yeah. So my, like I said, my ex was an attorney. He is an attorney, was an attorney for Child Protective Services, the same Child Protective Services where that other guy got put away in jail for 6 months with the 8 felony counts of rape. That my ex did the same job as that guy.
And do you want to talk
And
about that at this time? Let's give the people that update because we were supposed to have an interview. But as you can see, as the world turns for Anaya A, honey, talk to us because that was so heavy. I was like, I need 48 hours to even prepare myself. But talk to us about that case.
yes, so people can look up Nicholas D'Angelo. Okay. And he was an attorney for Child Protective Services in Niagara County, New York. And he was hired to work for CPS despite being a sex offender. It was public knowledge at the time of his hiring, and still is public knowledge, that when he was 16 or 17, he sexually assaulted a 14-year-old in a school hallway. And he took a plea deal so that he would not have to register as a sex offender.
Remind me
This
real quick, his name so I can repost that at this moment at
Mhm.
9:41 p.m. What's his name?
Nic- Nicholas D'Angelo, and there's a D hyphen and then capital A, D'Angelo.
Okay.
So it's not funny, but like we said before, irony funny or however you want to put it. But
Right.
I explained to people, if you hired Pablo Escobar to drive Brinks trucks, what do you think would happen?
None of that money will get to where it needs to go, honey.
Yeah. And I don't think he'd stop at just $1, right? No. So if, sex offenders, pedophiles, they're very prolific by nature. So if you put a sex offender as an attorney for CPS, what do you think's going to happen? The obvious is he's going to get himself in trouble. And that's what happened here. Nicholas D'Angelo was hired by Niagara County CPS in New York as an attorney for CPS in a very short time, and he was involved in my case as well. He found himself arrested and charged with 8 felony counts of rape. One of those victims was a child in DSS custody, allegedly. It didn't come out because he took a plea deal, but that was scheduled to be brought up in court, supposedly, if it went to trial. But this 16-year-old was in DSS custody. Unfortunately, our courts and our media, the mainstream media locally, referred to this child in DSS custody, the 16-year-old girl, as an underage prostitute.
Now, Stacey, what do you think is going to happen to this young lady in the future after hearing how they are referring to her as not taking her life or her case seriously and not even like they're calling her an underage prostitute as if she brought this on upon herself?
She's a victim. She's a child sex trafficking victim. I hope she sues the pants off of everyone that called her a prostitute.
And she will win because she has people like myself and you who will stand up and say enough is enough. I will fly to Buffalo. Like Stacey is flying to Harlem, USA for May 31st as one of our guest speakers. New flyer coming out tonight, by the way. I would fly to Buffalo and I would stand in that courtroom and demand for like, it just bothers me that this happened to this young girl. How is she now? Do you know, or do you keep up with this at all? Or is it she's not known to the public because of her situation and her age?
Right. Yeah. I have not spoken with her directly. And the plea deal was within the past couple of weeks, maybe a month. So yeah, I don't know how she's going to do from the situation, but as much as everyone's upset that he only got 6 months in jail for 8 felonies, which is abomination, but at least they got a conviction, because
Absolutely.
that almost never happens, especially of a public official.
Do you think, and of course, you're a white woman, right? I don't know your background, but I have to ask the question.
Last I checked.
As you check, blonde hair, blue eyes, we're here. Do you think race also has something to do with it, Stacey? Let's be real.
Yeah, real, I will. I'll give it to you. So I'm a physician assistant, and one day I had a girl as a patient who needed a more sensitive exam, and she's like, "You're going to have to be patient with me. I'm a victim," and so forth. And she was there with her husband, and she explained that she had been in the foster system growing up. And I said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I get it. I know where you're coming from. and I believe in you, right?
Mhm.
So, and she looked at her husband and she said, see, honey, that I'm telling the truth. Listen to her. And she said, you wouldn't believe all the Black girls that this happened to, too. So, yes, um, they definitely prey on Black families and children.
And you have it right from, and I hate to say the horse's mouth, but I don't know the other
You
way.
can call me a horse.
The horse's mouth, you're hearing it live and direct from a woman who knows exactly what the fight is and what's happening. And I want to thank you for your truth in sharing that, because at the end of the day, so many people think I come hard, but I have to, because at the end of the day, I have to let the people know I see it and you all should see it too. And if you choose not to, so be it. But don't tell me it's not happening. But here we are in a fight, though, that I've never really met a white woman in your shoes going through this. I've heard about it. Now, there are shows and movies, but I tell people life imitates art and art imitates life. So, whatever we're seeing on television half of the time is literally something that's happened somewhere along the lines. And so, with that being said, Stacey, I commend you. And I want to say, keep up the fight. When we first spoke, I was like, Stacey, are you not afraid of these people, because you're going up against these attorneys who know like a lot about you, including your ex-husband? And you said, no, Anaya, I'm not. And I will share.
So, a little bit about that. Um, Sometimes I counsel people and I tell them this is much like the Wizard of Oz. These people that you're afraid of are just a wee little man behind the curtain. But I'm going to go a little deeper than that. And I'm going to tell you that when I was growing up, if you told me that insecurity was the root of most evils in the world, I would have been like, what? I mean, what what girl or boy growing up didn't experience some moment of insecurity, when you're budding from, from a girl to woman and you're getting breasts, who isn't insecure about that? Or, some moment of insecurity, we've all experienced it.
May I share this
um
real quick, not to even interject? I was thinking that same thought as I was getting ready for the show. All of a sudden, it dawned on me that I was bullied growing up, but I fought back. Like, I was always a fighter. Like, if you look at my record, some people have access, many will never. But I was a I, was in trouble a lot for fighting, because I was trained as a little bitty thing, because I'm smaller than the rest of my siblings and family. So by the time I was 3 years old, not knowing, like you're saying, if somebody would have told me then that I would have been fighting these big monster people, you know, just bullies, I would have been like, no way, I'm just being trained just in case. And my aunt literally was the one who would train me incessantly. She's like, you're so petite. You have to learn how to fight. Like, don't tell your parents I'm teaching you this, but you're going to be a fighter. You have to fight. Now, Stacey, at 3 years old, my little mind couldn't conceptualize that this was going to be a thing. But as soon as it started happening, I'm fighting everybody. I'm like, no, you're not gonna bully me. You're not gonna attack me because I'm short. You're not gonna attack me because of my heritage. I'm Haitian and I'm proud. I'm a black girl. Why are people like saying they're not black? I see that you're black. But because there was so much racism in South Florida, that is where I was. And
right.
it was so much mental abuse and bullying that people were like, I'm not Haitian, I'm Bahamian. I'm not Haitian, I'm Jamaican. I'm not Haitian. Why? Because they would say bad things about our race and our community. And so I just said that to say I had that same thought as I was getting ready. Oh my God, I was bullied, but that bullying taught me, number one, that I was a fighter, regardless. And number two, don't nobody better go through my records, because they're gonna be like, whoa, this girl is out of control. Number three, it set me up for today's battles, Stacey.
Right. So insecurity to me is actually one of the greatest roots of all evil, because if you explore why racism, all these evil isms and schisms exist, it's because of actual insecurity. If you're confident in yourself, you don't care if somebody next to you is black. You don't care if somebody next to you is Republican or Democrat. You don't care if somebody next to you is Jewish, Muslim, or Christian. If you're
Mm,
confident in yourself, you don't need to put somebody down by an artificial means.
absolutely. And that hits a very strong nail on the head, which I'm not going to go down that road tonight.
It's a big road, but my point is,
No, no, no. It's a big thing you just said, Stacey, and people don't get it. And I've been battling with this because I'm like, why does racism exist? Why are people so mean? What did we do to, such and such? Why do people hate each other? Like I go through these periods and I'm just like, why are people so messed up?
so my point of this is, and the reason I bring this up is because when you talk about fear and exposing people, these people that we're talking about, these judges, these lawyers, these politicians, I made references to no matter how inflated their ego is and their misperceptions of themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's narcissism, right?
Yeah.
And narcissists are actually usually opposite of how they present themselves. They're usually very insecure
Yeah.
and they seek positions of power and authority. So they become lawyers, they become judges, they become politicians. But the secret to all of that is they are the wee man behind the curtain and they are insecure and they view themselves poorly. So they have to have this inflated public perception.
Hmm.
So when you're exposing these people, they're really just little people. And don't be afraid of them.
And honestly, I'm not afraid of them, and they know it because I put them on blast. Some people are like, Anaya, you should have a report card. And when it's time to go, vote again, you should mark them and not vote for them and stuff like this. Because I'm in the mix of a whole lot of stuff. But here's the bottom line. I think my silence and my absence is all I need to do. Because at the end of the day, I'm one of the most caring people. And this is where I shut it down. And then, of course, Stacey, you can share whatever else you want. But I think that's a perfect segue to say this. I am 100% authentic. I mean, literally, the only thing really fake on me is this wig. And the reason I have to wear the wig is because my hair is down my back, but I have natural Black woman hair, Stacey, and it's big and it's wild. Maybe for May 31st, I'll wear my natural hair out. So you can understand, because this is like a big thing for me. The bottom line is this. I have really nothing to be afraid of. And I think that those, like you're saying, that have to put on this personification and do all of these things and wear these masks because they are insecure and they are in so much fear, I feel for them. I empathize with them because the thing about me that people don't realize